Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our craft corner. I'm so excited to do some craft projects with you today, and we're going to be doing some activities that have to do with sunflowers to tie into our storytime book, The Sunflower Parable. Every month I'm going to make a video with some different arts and crafts projects in them that ties into one of our storybooks, and you are welcome to participate. Now I'm doing a few different activities because some of them are for different age groups. They all have different supplies, so you can kind of choose and pick which one suits you best or which one you're able to do with some of the supplies you might have at your house, or maybe you use this time to do a craft during Sabbath school or whatever it might be. So let's get started. We're going to do some crafts with sunflowers. All right, so to start out, this would be easier if you had colored construction paper. I don't have colored construction paper. I just got plain paper. So I'm going to slowly move my camera down here so you can see. So if you had colored construction paper, you would want yellow construction paper. All right, but since I don't, I'm gonna just use white paper and then I'm gonna color it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna trace our hand. And so I'm gonna use my yellow crayon here to trace my hand. Around and around we go. And then I'm gonna color it in. So you can see how this would be a lot easier if I just had colored paper, right? But we make do with what we got. So I could use colored pencils on this, I could use markers, I can use crayons, whatever you've got works, all right? So I'm gonna color in my hand here. And then we're gonna cut it out, all right? So if you need a grown-up to help with your cutting, that is something you're gonna have to ask for some assistance with, all right? So then we're gonna cut the hand out. So we're gonna go around and around, practice our cutting skills. And your guys' hands, I'm thinking, are gonna be a little bit smaller than mine. So you might have to trace your hand lots and lots of times because I got a head start so that I could show you what the finished product would look like. So you're gonna make lots and lots of your hands on yellow paper or by tracing on white and coloring it in yellow. And once you've got them all cut out, we're going to make our sunflower with a handprint here. Around and around and around. And cut it off. Move my scrap paper, and I'm going to show you the ones that I've already made here. So I'm taking all of my hands. Do you see this? Look at all of my hands, and I laid them on top of each other, and this is the last hand I need to make my sunflower with my handprints. Now, you could glue them all together with a glue stick or with liquid glue. You could tape them all together. I actually didn't have a glue stick, so I'm cheating. I'm using a stapler. So you could use a stapler, you could use tape, whatever you've got at home works. All right, so we're just gonna line up my hand here, and we're gonna staple it on. If I can line it up. There we go. So now I've got my handprint sunflower, and you see it's really light colored yellow because I just used crayon, all right? So if you've got yellow paper or maybe markers, that might show up better. And now I've got to make the middle of my sunflower. Now I don't know about you, but I can't draw a perfect circle. So I'm going to use my can here, and I'm going to tip it over, and I'm going to trace it. So I'm going to trace it here. I'm going to grab a brown. I'm going to trace it. And now I've got a circle, all right? So you could use a peanut butter jar, you could use an oatmeal container, or you could just draw a circle, whatever you want to do. And then, again, we're going to color. So if you had construction paper, you could use brown construction paper at this time and be cutting it out. Otherwise, you could be using markers. And then I need to draw some sunflower seeds on here, huh? So I would just draw my different sunflower seeds around and around and around and around and around. And because this is gonna shake my whole table, I did this one ahead of time too. So you would go around and around and around and around and fill it full of your sunflowers, and then you would cut that out too. And here's one that I made a little bit earlier. So you see, I cut out the center of my sunflower, and now again, you could use glue, you could use a stapler. I'm gonna do some tape rolls for this one. So I'm gonna roll some pieces of tape. And then I'm gonna stick this in the middle there. And now I've got my sunflower that I could hang up. I could share it with someone. I could share it with my neighbor. I can share it with a family member. I could give it to someone at church. Just kind of a fun thing. And you could even write a message on the back and have it be like a fall card. But there is our first activity, all right? So there is our handprint sunflower. All right, the next fun one that I want to show you has to do with paint. So if you don't have paint at home, that's okay. I'm going to just show it to you anyways. And maybe it's one that you can do later. So I have some paint colors here. I have some forks. And then I'm using some leftover cardboard that I cut up because sometimes when you put paint onto thin paper, it gets really wet, you know? And then when it dries, it gets all curly. So I'm gonna use a piece of cardboard that I cut from a box. So for this one, I'm gonna take a little bit of brown paint and put it on my paper plate here. So a little bit of brown and a little bit of yellow for my sunflower. A little bit of orange. Because sunflowers are they're made out of the warm colors on the color wheel, aren't they? They're warm colors, they're sunny. And then a little bit of green. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm using plastic forks, but you could use whatever fork you've got at home. You could also use paintbrushes. So I'm gonna grab some yellow on my fork and I'm gonna make a kind of a circle in my center to give me a starting point. Then I'm gonna dip my fork and I'm gonna come along the outside like this and kind of flutter it out. I think I'm gonna need a little more paint here. Put some more paint so I can dip more of my fork. There we go. And we're making new ways to make our sunflower leaves, right? Like our last one was our handprints. This one's kind of our wispy fork pieces. Because there's so many different types of sunflowers out there. Now I'm going to take some orange just to kind of mix in there. And orange is our mix of our primary colors, yellow and red. And so you can kind of see as the orange mixes in with the yellow, we kind of get our different colors. And you're just gonna do this until it looks the way you want it, right? You could go for as big of a sunflower as you want. Just go nuts with making kind of this fun abstract art with your fork. Okay, so I'm gonna call that my sunflower, right? Kind of a funky looking sunflower. And then I'm gonna take, you could take like the end of your fork, this end, and I'm gonna dip that in my brown. And I'm gonna kind of go in the middle and kind of put my seeds there in the middle. You could do fingerprints if you wanted, as long as you're sure that everyone's okay with you putting paint on your fingers. And now I'm gonna put a stem. So I'm gonna take my fork again and I'm gonna come down like this. I'm gonna give my sunflower a stem and then I'm gonna give my sunflower a leaf on the side. And there is my fork sunflower. All right, and then it's gotta dry for a while, doesn't it? All right, so this is another one where you could write a message on the side and make it a card. You could just hang it on the refrigerator. You could do whatever you wanted with it. But that's another fun art project that just requires paint and a fork, all right? And making sure that we're not being too messy. Our last project that I'm gonna show you has to do with a little bit of water and markers and a coffee filter. Okay, so maybe you've got coffee filters at home for Roma. And the thing with coffee filters is they're really thin, right? And you can kind of see through them. Now I'm going to use a baking dish here. I'm going to use like a cookie sheet because it's going to help catch my spills because we're going to be a little bit messy with this one. That's also why I'm wearing an apron here. So I've got some markers, all right? So I've got a couple different markers here in different colors. And do you see how on my coffee filter there's already all these ridges around the outside? So when I spread it out here, I'm just going to trace along those ridges, and I'm just going to kind of go out like this and make all these lines on those ridges to make the leaves of my sunflower. And this project, when we're done with it, is going to be a sun catcher. And so all of these, we would kind of say they're a little bit of like abstract art. You know, it doesn't look exactly like the sunflower that might be out in our yard, but it's kind of a fun artistic rendition. All right, so now I'm using like an orangey yellow, and I'm just going around, putting lots and lots of color around and around. Kind of also looks like, you know, like if I were drawing a sunbeam, right? Just all the rays of the sun. And then I've got my other yellow. So just all the different shades. Now, if you've only got, you know, some simple markers and you've only got one yellow and one orange, or if you've just got yellow, that's fine. You're just gonna go around and you're gonna add more stripes of that one color. Because when I look at this, what color do you think it's mostly? Doesn't it look a little more orange than yellow? So maybe I'll add a little bit more yellow here. Maybe I'll add a lighter yellow. That one's almost like a highlighter color. Now you can get a cup of water and you could use like an eyedropper if you have an eyedropper in your kitchen. You could use a spoon, or you could use a paintbrush. Lots of different options. You could just use a paper towel or a sponge. So now I'm just putting some yellow in the middle, putting some yellow and orange in the middle, but then for my seeds, I'm going to take brown, right? I'm going to take brown and I'm going to kind of just put some seed marks on it. So I'm going to put some seed marks so we don't have to do anything too fancy here. All right, here is my sunflower, but now we're going to get it wet. So that's why it's nice to have our cookie sheet. Maybe have paper towels close by. So I've got a cup of water and I've got a paintbrush, okay? And I'm just gonna take my paintbrush, or you could use an eyedropper, or you could use a sponge. And you see how it's gonna soak through here, and we're gonna basically make it lay all the way down. And our colors are gonna start mixing. Our marker is gonna start bleeding as it gets wet, and it's gonna start acting like a dye for the rest of our coffee filter. So I'm getting it nice and wet as we lay it down here, and you see how it's kind of swirling the colors around as I go with my brush. And maybe I want more of my colors to mix. Maybe I want my lines to be more like that. And then we need to let it dry. All right, so once you have it looking the way you want it to, you can just set it out to dry. You could very carefully, because it'll want to tear. It'll want to tear when it's all wet. So you can't really see the colors right now because it needs to dry. But I could put it on like a drying rack that you use with cookies. Or if you want a fun lesson in evaporation, with the help of your grown-up, you can use a hair dryer. And you can take a hair dryer really gently on here and you can dry it pretty fast that way. So this one is gonna set and dry, but I'm gonna show you the one I made a little bit earlier. And here's what I did. Look at it, it's all dry. Then I took some sunflower seeds and I glued them in the middle. Now you don't have to do that if you don't want to. And maybe you don't even have sunflower seeds at your house. I don't have any eating sunflower seeds. I had to go dig around in my bird seed for my bird feeder outside and pick out some sunflower seeds. But I glued some in the middle to kind of make it look more like a sunflower. And then I can hang that up in my window and it becomes my sun catcher. So I'm going to take you over to my window now and I'll kind of show you what this could look like. All right, so if I take it over to my window, there we go, and there's our sun catcher that you could hang up. Isn't that kind of cool? So there's 3 different sunflower art projects that you could do over this month. Now for my older kids out there, maybe you're going, oh, these are little kid crafts. Here is your challenge. You're gonna look up The Sunflowers by Van Gogh. Van Gogh was this artist and he loved sunflowers because of how beautiful they were to him. And he has a very famous painting of sunflowers. He used to draw them a lot. And it's just of a vase of sunflowers, and he would just look at the vase and draw it and paint it. So maybe you look at a picture, or you look at the sunflowers out in your yard, or you look at a vase, or maybe you have some fake sunflowers that your mom or your grandma or the church decorates with, and maybe you just want to try just drawing them yourself, or using crayons or markers or paints to create your own still life sunflowers. All right? So there are some sunflower art projects for you to have fun with this month. And I can't wait to see your finished product. So please send the pictures to me, all right? Our contact information is in the video description, and I can't wait to see your creativity at work. Have lots of fun.